Is this the dagger?
And once again, welcome to another episode of the On the Ball podcast. I'm your host, Payoff here on the TWSN YouTube channel. Make sure to go subscribe. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Will Laughlin and Thomas Stapleton. Guys, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Only in 2020 would I be excited to watch Pistons-Knicks preseason, but here we are. Basketball is back, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm doing amazing. Basketball is back tonight, which is honestly hard to believe because it's just been like 2 months, since we had the NBA Finals and the playoffs and the bubble. And honestly, it's weird, but it feels like kind of like a 2K sim where you're just simming the offseason and you're doing like free agency 1 minute and then the draft and then like preseason camp and all that stuff. Honestly, that's what it feels like right now, and it's great.
Yeah, for real. We have the NBA preseason starting tonight with Pistons-Knicks tipping off. Couldn't believe I would be excited for that either. We also have the Hawks playing today. We don't know if James Harden's going to play, but the Rockets are playing. We have the Lakers and the Clippers. No AD, no LeBron. And then we have the Kings and Blazers finishing off the night. So, guys, with that being said, what are you guys looking most forward to tonight? What are you going to take away from the preseason as a whole? And essentially, what are you looking forward to seeing from the preseason?
With the preseason, you really can't take it too seriously. Some guy's going to go off and you'll be like, wow, he could be a most improved candidate, and then he's trash in the regular season and nothing ever happens. But with the preseason, there are a couple things to look for. For me, my main purpose with preseason is watching the rookies. And tonight we see 2 top 10 picks going at it with Killian Hayes and Obi Toppin. Killian Hayes, one of my favorite guys in this class. Obi Toppin could be a beast as well. That's going to be exciting. And that's really what I'm looking forward to. I'm just looking forward to watching the rookies because nothing else really matters to me too much. I am curious to see John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins with the Houston Rockets. I just want to see if they are in basketball shape. That's really all I want to see with them. I don't expect them to make a ton of shots, but can they consistently stay on the court, especially considering it's just a preseason game? Those are really the 2 things that I'm looking towards tonight. Again, it's preseason. You really can't take this too seriously, but I'm gonna look for the rookies, and I'm gonna look for John Wall and Boogie Cousins in Houston.
Yeah, I mean, for me, just start off, I think watching basketball, it's going to be awesome just to see it on a personal level for me. But, I agree. You can't really take too much from preseason. And when it comes to like narratives, like what you're seeing on the court, you can't be like, oh, that might translate or it may not. We don't really know. So rookies are definitely going to be something that I'm looking for. I'm also going to be looking for, guys off injuries and also new free agents. And obviously like Russell Westbrook, will he be playing? How much will he be playing for the Wizards? How much will Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving be playing together for the Nets in these preseason games? We don't really know, but hopefully they'll play a little bit. They'll probably start, but just play 15 to 20 minutes, I would expect at most. We obviously know that the Clippers-Lakers, it's not going to be, they're playing in the first preseason game, but they're also going to play opening night. LeBron and AD aren't even playing tonight, so it really doesn't matter. I would say from a team perspective, though, tonight, I'm looking at the Hawks, because the Hawks are definitely a team where we could see them being a breakout team. They were one of the worst teams in the NBA last year, but we expect them to be a playoff contender this year. So really I'm looking for what are their rotations and the minute distribution. What's that going to be here in the preseason? Because I expect that they'll be trying to work that out here so that it's not like too rusty when they actually start playing games that matter. So hopefully we get to see a good look of the Hawks. That's really the biggest team that I'm looking for. But I'm really excited to see the rookies and obviously the new guys via free agency and trades on their respective teams.
So it's a preseason. You can't take it too seriously. There's only a limited amount of things that you should take into account when you're taking it seriously. And one of those is health. Is every player healthy? How are they looking back? Players like Kevin Durant, like you mentioned, Thomas, John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, are they recovering well? Are they playing well coming off catastrophic injuries? That's yet to be seen. It's those things, as well as rookies. How are they getting acclimated to the NBA scene? Rookies this year, they didn't have a summer league. They had a shortened training camp. How are they going to perform just thrown onto the scene? That's going to be time to tell as well. And you can't really take things too seriously with teams like the Lakers, the Clippers, teams that have already been with each other for a year. We already know how they operate. We already see LeBron and AD are load managing the preseason, this game one. Like, we already know what to expect from those teams. There's teams like the Nets, who we haven't seen yet, Warriors, the new look Warriors, the Hawks, like Will attested. The new teams, health, and rookies is the main thing to take away from this preseason, going into the actual regular season.
And yeah, like you were going back to the whole rookies thing, like this year with with a shortened training camp, with no summer league, like the win now players, like the guys that were drafted that can come in and compete right away they're gonna be huge. Someone that I've been reading a ton of reports on has been super, super impressive in training camp, Malachi Flynn. The Raptors are already talking him up a bunch. Nick Nurse has had extremely high praise for him. And I think that guys like him, maybe someone else like Desmond Bane, like the 4-year seniors who know what they are, who are going to come in and play a role. I think that those guys may be the most, they're going to be the most successful at first. It'll take some guys longer to, get accumulated with actually playing in the NBA.
Yeah.
And I think, go ahead, Will.
Yeah, I was just going to build off that a bit. I think it's also going to kind of affect, the rookies, but also the new players coming in for like trades and free agency. I think that's going to affect, the awards possibly, the most improved rookie of the year. It's going to be pretty unpredictable. I think just relatively to the norm of what we see from those awards. I think it's going to be pretty unpredictable to see which guys are going to be in that conversation this year.
Yeah, and to add to Thomas's point with the rookies, I think rookies with strong veteran presence, like guys like Obi Toppin, I'm not sure how they're going to perform since they don't have strong veteran presence on that team. They don't have a clear sense of leadership. But guys like Killian Hayes, who's being mentored by Derrick Rose as we speak, I think those guys are really benefiting from this shortened training camp, from no summer league. Those guys are going to be ready to go instantaneously. They know things. They pick up on things that most other guys who aren't in similar situations don't have the privilege of picking up on. But if that's all that we have on the preseason, we can move on to James Harden and the Houston Rockets. So reports have come out that James Harden has narrowed his list down to the Miami Heat, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Milwaukee Bucks as potential trade destinations. And I'm going to start with Will on this one since he had something to say about the Rockets. So, Will, how do you think the Rockets are going to fare from here if they keep Harden or if they don't? And which team do you think Harden should be traded to and why?
Yeah, so I kind of want to take this in two parts. Part one is really if the Rockets do end up trading Harden. I think that's the least likely scenario at this point, just given how close we are to the season, but I suppose it could still happen. We saw reports say that the Sixers and the Rockets have actually entertained conversations about this kind of trade happening. So that's interesting. But I think Rockets Sixers makes the most sense for both sides, just because for Houston, I mean, Ben Simmons would be a pretty damn good return, all things considered, for James Harden. I mean, you get a player who's an all-star level player right now and could potentially get even better and be a great player for his career. And I think Ben Simmons is a better return than a Karis LeVert and a Jared Allen. No disrespect to them, obviously, but Ben Simmons, that's a great return. And then for the Sixers, I mean, James Harden is obviously a better player than Ben Simmons. And if you're in a win-now situation with Daryl Morey, who he may not want – I'm not really sure what Daryl Morey wants, if he wants Harden or not, but I think time will tell if he does or not, whether they get the deal done or not. So, yeah, I think the Sixers, they would obviously move into more of a contender status if they got James Harden, because he's obviously – relatively better than Ben Simmons at this point in their careers. But to just address if they don't end up trading James Harden and, the Rockets are keep pat, I think by far my biggest hot take for this upcoming season is the Rockets. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. And, a lot of people pencil them in just because they are a team who actually statistically they've had the most playoff appearances. They have the longest active streak in terms of just playoff appearances over the last, I believe, I don't even know. I'm pretty sure it's well over a decade. So it's impressive, but I think it's going to come to an end this year. And my biggest reasoning for that is mean, number one, you have a disgruntled superstar like James Harden. He's going to put up some really good numbers, but I don't think, given the team around him, it's going to have the same impact. Just because, I mean, I think John Wall and Christian Wood, that's a downgrade over Russell Westbrook and Covington, respectively. I think Westbrook and Covington are better players than John Wall and Christian Wood, especially when John Wall coming off of injury. So I think, you have a disgruntled star. James Harden, he hasn't even shown up to training camp. He hasn't even done his individual
He's
workout.
there now. He has
now, but he's shown up late, extremely late. So I don't really think he's that engaged. I think he pretty much wants out of Houston. And you're relying on Boogie Cousins and John Wall off of major injuries to play significant roles for you. I mean, you have a first-year head coach who you're also relying on, who wants to implement kind of a new system and not as much as ball dominance as Harden's had in his career with D'Antoni. So I don't see it. I don't see the pieces falling in place this year for Houston, and I honestly think that they're going to be the 9 seed. They'll still be in playoff contention. They're still going to be in the hunt, obviously, but I think teams like the Jazz and the Suns are going to be ahead of them in the regular season, and I think they'll make the playoffs over them.
Thomas, go ahead.
Here's what I'm going to say about that. Now, I get what you're saying, but I think we have to look at this. Like, I understand James Harden is disgruntled, but let's not ignore the fact that he is one of the best floor raisers in the NBA. And when I say that, I mean the dude can just take bad teams and make them good. Similar to a Russell Westbrook, where he's not going to take you from, good playoff team to a championship contender. But if you're a terrible team, he'll take you to the playoffs. Probably not very far. He'll probably lose in the first round, but he'll take you to the playoffs. James Harden is very similar in that sense, where he is going to be good enough. He's going to put up the numbers, and he's going to lead you to the playoffs. How far? That's what I question. But I think we have to look at this as they still have James Harden. They have Christian Wood. They've got pieces. I mean, I don't expect John Wall to be very good, nor do I expect DeMarcus Cousins to be very good. But you've got James Harden, you've got PJ Tucker, you've got Christian Wood. You've still got solid role players combined with a superstar. And I just feel like when you have that, you don't miss the playoffs, especially when you have James Harden, who's a top 10 NBA player. But with that being said, with the Rockets, just trade Harden. Just do it already. The longer you keep him, the more trade value he loses. It's obviously contenders are still going to want Harden, but it's just get rid of him. He clearly doesn't want to stay. You're not going to convince him to stay. Just deal him. Now, the team that I think needs him the most is the Bucks. I don't think they have the best package, but I think if there's a team that really desperately needs James Harden, it's the Bucks, because if they get James Harden, that makes it more enticing for Giannis to sign long term. It also makes them I would have them coming out of the East. I might have them winning. Yeah, it's ridiculous to be overpowered. When you pair two superstars, they would seriously challenge the Lakers. But the team that I think, like you said, Will, I think it's the Philadelphia 76ers here. Philadelphia fans, look, Ben Simmons is great, but the fact that you guys are not willing to give up Ben Simmons to get James Harden is ridiculous. Simmons is a great player, but he's never going to be on James Harden's level. And if you think that, I'm sorry, but you are just lost in bias. He's never going to be better than James Harden. And that's just the cold, hard truth. If you trade for James Harden, you're pairing James Harden with one of the game's best big men in Joel Embiid. Maybe you can get in PJ Tucker as well. And you've got shooting. You've got a legitimate perimeter superstar in Harden. You've got a dominant post big in Embiid, surrounded by shooters and guys who, are great role players for a championship team. Danny Green, great might be a stretch for him, but Seth Curry and PJ Tucker, yeah, exactly. Harden and Philly would be fun to see as well. It just makes the most sense to me. I just think that the Bucks need him the most, but if there's a package that really is really enticing to Houston, I think it's got to be Philadelphia.
Yeah. And just to give one last thought, respond to, I don't think that Houston is going to be a bad team just because they have James Harden. There's no way Houston is just going to be a bad NBA team because James Harden is just that great. I still think he may be a little bit less focused than he is just because he knows that he really has no chance to win a championship on Houston at this point. but he's still probably going to average over 30 points just because that's what he does. It's James Harden. He's one of the best scorers ever. But the reason I think Houston, I put them down is mainly because they're in the West and because teams like the Suns, I think, are just a better overall constructed team just in terms of their chemistry. And I think they're just going to be a more focused team. There's less chaos kind of going around with the Suns and even the Jazz. You could make an argument that the Houston Rockets may still be a better team than the Jazz, but I think the Jazz will finish with a better record in the regular season just because they're a more focused and coherent all-around team. And, look, the Jazz, they're not flashy, but at least they have a team identity. I have no idea what this Houston Rockets team identity is going to be at all, and so I'm just expecting them to slip in the standings.
So I have to agree with Will on this one and disagree with Thomas that I believe that regardless if Harden stays or if Harden goes, I believe the Houston Rockets will miss the playoffs. And it's nothing against Harden. It's nothing against John Wall, nothing against DeMarcus Cousins. They're all good players. Harden especially is a tremendous player. I just feel like there's 8 teams probably even more better than them. They'll be in the play-in contention for sure, but I can't put them ahead of the Lakers. I can't put them ahead of the Clippers, the Nuggets, the Mavs, the Suns, the Warriors. I'm already at 6. You can even throw in the Pelicans and Jazz. I think they're on. I think they're on the level with the Pelicans, the Grizzlies. I think they're on that level where they're going to be fighting for the play-in seed, but I don't think they're going to be a definitive playoff team by any means.
I'm for sure taking them over the Pelicans, but I think another team that I would take.
Oh, Portland. I forgot about Portland.
I'm actually pretty big on Portland this year, but yeah, I would take. I have them as the 8th seed battling for the 7th seed, which I don't think is crazy at all.
Yeah, they're in the. I guess the 9 seed would be. They would have a play-in game, correct?
Yeah, they would have a play-in game. So
honestly, okay, they may make the playoffs just because if they played a play-in with the Jazz, I might take the Rockets over the Jazz just because of
just
James
a one-game elimination.
Right, one game, James Harden. They'll probably try and get like 40, 50 points, and I don't think the Jazz are going to stop them.
Yeah, the Jazz can't stop Harden.
Right.
I mean, most people can't. But it's going to be tough. I believe that they're either going to be the 8 seed if they even make the playoffs or the 9 seed. I can't see him any higher than that. And in terms of Harden's trade rumors, like you guys already attested to, Milwaukee needs him. I mean, people won't think that right now, but they need him. They need to make a package around Chris Middleton and try to get him. They already gave up most of their assets to go and get Jrue Holiday, which was it was a questionable move at the time. Maybe they gave up a little bit too much for Jrue, but it's a move that they had to make at the current situation of their team. But in terms of if they want to win a championship or actually have a chance to compete with the Lakers, they need to get him. They need to get James Harden. It's just that simple. You pair one of the best offensive players in basketball with the best defensive player in basketball. That pick and roll is going to be devastating. You have a guy. The main problem with the Bucks is they don't have a half-court creator. You get one of the best half-court creators in the entire league, possibly one of the best half-court creators of all time. I just see that as a perfect match in heaven. So the Bucks need him, but the best move would probably be to Philadelphia, pair him up with Joel Embiid. Like Thomas has said, and I've seen this floating around the media, how they shouldn't trade Ben Simmons because he's a 25-year-old all-NBA caliber player. Ben Simmons, if he does not get a perimeter shot, I'm telling you right now, he's peaked as a player. He is peaked as a player if he does not add a perimeter shot. Maybe he can get a little bit better, but in terms of his actual player value, it is not going to go.
He's not going to get to the next level.
It's not going to be much higher than what it is right now if he does not add any type of jump shot to his arsenal. So in terms of Ben Simmons, I don't see why people rate. I've seen people call him the next LeBron James, and I just laugh because that's simply just blasphemy in terms of Ben Simmons. So if the Philadelphia 76ers, and I know Daryl Morey wants to see if Simmons and Embiid work out all right, he's eventually going to see that it's a decent fit, but it's not the best you could be. The best version of the 76ers will be with James Harden, and I just hope it won't be too late before he realizes that. So if the 76ers have a trade offer with Ben Simmons on the table for James Harden, I send him all the way. You get James Harden. It's that simple. And another team that I've seen their fan base and the media talk about with their young players is the Miami Heat. People are talking about Tyler Hero. They shouldn't give him up for James Harden. What the hell are they talking about? Tyler Hero is quickly becoming one of the more overrated players in the NBA, and I love me some Tyler Hero. I think he has so much promise. He's a great shot creator for himself. He's an excellent shooter. One of the best young scorers in the NBA. But he's never going to be on the level of James Harden. Not anywhere near him offensively as a shot creator, as a playmaker, as a scorer. He's not going to be anywhere near him. And even defensively, James Harden is a positive on defense now. Tyler Hero is never going to be that. I'm sorry. He's not. Maybe he can develop into a junior, but he's not going to be James Harden on offense or defense. James Harden, if you want to win a championship right now, you go get James Harden. Whichever team, I'm telling you right now, if an Eastern Conference team gets James Harden, whoever it is, Brooklyn, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, or Miami, one of those teams gets James Harden, and discarding health, like if everyone stays healthy, the team that gets James Harden is making it out of the Eastern Conference. It's that simple.
Agreed. Yeah, last thing about the James Harden trade stuff is, honestly, that would be wild if he went to the Bucks, just because of we've seen like Giannis and Harden have this like rivalry. I don't know, they're just taking shots at each other, so that'd be kind of crazy to see him on the same team. But I don't think Giannis would be mad, just because he knows he needs to win a champion, or he wants obviously deeply to win a championship in Milwaukee. So
we've seen multiple examples of players that have had some sort of history team up for the greater good.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think Giannis will have a problem.
Yeah, I don't think he's going
to James Harden to his basketball team.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of fans overrate their team's players. Like, I remember a while back there was a little bit of Harden to Boston buzz, and they were like, we don't want to give up Jaylen Brown. I was like, look, Jaylen Brown's a great player. Again, now I feel like we're underappreciating James Harden. Like, you are not – I'm sorry, unless you have a Luka Doncic, a Giannis Antetokounmpo, maybe, you're never going to have a guy as good as James Harden is.
Generational talent.
Exactly. One of the best players, not only today, of all time.
Right, and he still has prime years left.
Exactly. So if you're trading, like, you give up Jaylen Brown, you give up Tyler Hero. Look, I love Tyler Hero. I've loved him since the draft. With that being said, he's not James Harden. He's not James Harden. He's not even close. You give him up 10 times out of 10 for James Harden. Like, we got to stop overrating our own players, and we just got to realize that this is James Harden. Like,
and I've seen, like, as a Thunder fan, I've seen like people overrate our young guys, and that's fair. People love to do that. People love to overrate their young guys. Like, people are calling Shea a future MVP. I don't see it at all. Like, but people love to overrate their young guys because that's the future of their organization. But you have to realize, if you have a chance to go get someone who you're like, let's say Shea or Tyler Hero. Let's say Miami Heat fans are calling him a future MVP. He's not going to be. But they don't realize that with a future MVP, your window just goes out the drain. You have a window right now. However, you can get a current MVP like right now for the price of someone who you believe might be a future MVP, might not be. No, you go get the player that's established. Like, it's just that simple.
Yeah, I just like, I've legitimately seen some people say, oh, we don't want to give up Tyler Hero. Too valuable. And it's like, yes, he's valuable, but this is not, we're not trading him for Trevor Ariza. We're trading him for James Harden.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes seems like, I've always thought Danny Ainge has been a little bit too. I mean, he is able to get so many young assets, like, he had an offer. He has such an attachment to all those picks and all those young players, which I always just thought he overdoes it a little bit.
And that's why the Celtics will not win a championship with they won't win a championship soon, because Danny Ainge this has always been his problem. He can't commit to a rebuild or winning now. He had a chance to go get Kawhi Leonard in the offseason following their miraculous conference finals run with the Cavs, where they lost to LeBron and company in 7. He had a chance to go get Kawhi Leonard for a first, Jaylen Brown and Terry Rozier or something else, and he said no. He wanted to keep those young guys. So it's just the teams that can't commit to winning now or rebuild is the ones that are stuck in purgatory.
Also, Celtics fans, Celtics fans have Marcus Smart as equal. I've seen Celtics fans hype up Marcus Smart as equally as valuable as Jason Tatum. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I understand Marcus Smart is a meme and he's like your longest tenured player because he was drafted by the Celtics.
I mean, to be fair, no one with credibility would say that. But
yeah, obviously. But I've just seen Celtics fans, they overvalue Marcus Smart like to the extreme.
He's valuable. He's
extremely valuable, but he's not like
to the point where someone keeps calling someone underrated. They're not underrated anymore. Like
yeah, same thing with overrated.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like people used to call Dame was like, "Oh, you're super underrated." He's not underrated at all.
They're putting him over Steph Curry.
Yeah, if anything, he's become a little bit overrated.
But yeah, we're gonna shift gears here from the James Harden and the Houston Rockets controversy, and we're gonna get to our disagreements. So, a recent company released their top 100 list of players who they predict will be in order for the next NBA season. So there are multiple things that each one of us disagreed with. We disagreed with actually most of the list orders. So I'm going to start with Will on this one. What was your biggest disagreement from this list? And do you think this list was an accurate depiction of the current state of the NBA?
No, so I just made like I just wrote down an entire list of like stuff that I hate from this. And I might be like half the entire list, to be honest. Now, I will say this. It's supposed to be apparently like a projection of the end of next year, which makes it a little bit, just a tiny bit more credible, but there's still just some terrible stuff on this list. And honestly, I could go on and talk about, DeRozan and Wall, and like KCP being over DeRozan and Wall, which is
the Lakers bias.
John Wall, I'm not like John Wall. He's not going to come back and be an all-star, but he's better than Contavious Caldwell-Pope. I'm no DeMar DeRozan guy, but like again, he's better than KCP for crying out loud. And
or Lonzo Ball, who's right ahead of him.
Right, and Danilo Gallinari and Brook Lopez, like those guys are extremely valuable to their teams, and they're in like the 80s. What? That's ridiculous. Zach LaVine is. Look, Zach LaVine. You could say he puts up a little empty stats, but still, I think he was ranked in the 50s or 60s, a little bit too low, especially since I think his scoring numbers could be even better than they were last year. So I don't understand how he could be still. I believe he was in the same spot he was last year, and he took like a major leap. That makes no sense. Damonte Sabonis coming off, an all-star season. Is that what, number 50? That's ridiculous. He was literally an all-star last year, and he's in the number 50 player in the NBA. That's kind of Karis LeVert was over Damonte Sabonis. Karis LeVert, there is no way he's a better player than Damonte Sabonis. It's ridiculous. But I think my biggest issue, honestly, comes within like the superstar players. First of all, we have Kevin Durant at 7. I won't be too mad at that just because of the injury.
He's at 6. He's at 6.
Oh, at 6? Okay, yeah, at 6. I won't be too mad at that just because of the injury. So, maybe they're just projecting that he won't be as good coming off injury. Fair enough. I disagree, but it's certainly a possibility. But Damian Lillard over Curry and Harden, what? This is what we were talking about, like Damian Lillard being overrated. This is ridiculous. Steph.
And I love Dame. I love me some Dame.
Right.
I really feel bad because I can't give Dame the credit he deserves if people are going to take it overboard.
Exactly. Yeah. Damian Lillard over Steph Curry and James Harden is nonsense. That's ridiculous. Bam over Embiid. Bam is going to have to become like a 45% three-point shooter for that to even be a remote possibility. And he was like, what? He can't even shoot. But he's going to have to develop a jump shot for that to even him to be in the conversation with Joel Embiid. That's ridiculous. Trey Young at 29. What? He's not even he's higher than that right now. He could jump into the top 20 or like far into the top 20 by the end of the season. Zion at 19 is too high for me. I could see him being in that range if he takes like a Luka level leap.
It's very unlikely.
But yeah, I agree. It's more likely than not, or it's less likely to happen, to be honest. Kyrie at 25 is ridiculous. That's just like, that's honestly, I've recapped all my descriptions.
Karl Anthony Towns at 23.
Yeah, Karl Anthony Towns at 23. He's better than that right now. And he's he's literally entering his prime, which means he can get better. So again,
it's crazy how these companies want to favor like teams with a big market and the big name appeal. Like you put Zion Williamson ahead of Karl Anthony Towns, Trey Young, and Kyrie Irving. It's just simply not true. It's just not true.
Draymond Green was at 44. What?
Yeah,
Like maybe last season he was like the 44th just because he wasn't good.
Yeah.
But this season he's going to be so much better. He was literally an all-star when he plays with Steph Curry. So I believe we're going to see more of that Draymond Green than what we saw last year. Van Vliet was over Porzingis, which by the end of the next season, that's just not going to be true at all. Like
it's not even. It's not true right now. It's not even.
Yeah, it's not even true right now, but it's going to even be less true by the end of next season. So there's just honestly this list. I thought maybe this list wasn't as bad because it was a projection instead of right now, but it honestly might be a little bit worse.
No, it's garbage.
Now that I think about it.
Let's actually, weirdly enough, I don't hate the Zion ranking. And I know some people might get mad about that one because, he only played 20 games. Shut up. How good was he in those 20 games? He was a beast. Okay? Like let's stop getting like ridiculously mad. Like, how is Zion ranked this high?
His on-pace stats would have blown John Morant out of the water.
Exactly.
He would easily would have won Rookie of the Year.
He probably, I don't really know what it would have been like for the rest of the season, but he could have been an all-star as a rookie. He was that good.
He was better than Brandon Ingram when they were playing together.
Absolutely.
So
I don't actually hate the Zion ranking. I certainly think it's better than some of them that I've seen on this list, like Lonzo Ball at 54. Every year, it's the same story. If Lonzo Ball becomes more aggressive and, all that stuff, he's going to break out. And guess what? It never happens. Never happens. Every single year, it's the same story and the same results. Just like, honestly, I think we're all rooting for Lonzo Ball to succeed, but I just don't know if it's going to happen. To be quite honest, I don't know if he really has that mentality that like, hey, I need to be aggressive. I need to attack the basket. I need to put up a ton of shots to help my team. I just don't know if that's his mentality. And it's a shame because I think he's got a really good amount of potential, but it just doesn't seem like he's fully using it to the max. So, it's just
that's why his free throw shooting is so terrible. He has no confidence.
That's the biggest separator between LaMelo and Lonzo. The thing is, Lonzo might have better physical potential, like with his attributes. Like he really does. But LaMelo has that fearlessness about his game that you could just pinpoint. You could take that out, and he's going to grind. He's going to at least he tries to finish around the rim. LaMelo has so much more aggression in his game, and that's the biggest thing Lonzo has been missing all along.
Absolutely. Like, they're both obviously tremendous passers, but the biggest difference is that Lonzo is pass first, LaMelo is score first. And I think that's what's going to separate those two in the league. D'Angelo Russell at 69 was just atrocious. John Wall at 81. This might be unpopular.
You think he's lower?
Yeah. I do think he's lower. And because, one, people have to understand it's a projection. And they have to understand that John Wall is not going to be good. That's just the cold, hard truth. John Wall is not going to be good next season.
His last game was December 26, 2018.
And now he's on a brand new team that has an interesting roster. And coming off of, torn Achilles, torn ACL. We talked about this a ton, but I just don't see John Wall being that guy again. I just don't see it. I think 81 is a completely fair ranking. I know people are going to get mad because of name bias, but John Wall is just not the same player.
And let's be completely real. The game constantly changes. Basketball constantly changes. And I think John Wall's lack of a jump shot and lack of being an effective off-ball player as well as being an effective floor spacer, it's really going to hurt him, especially in this pace. Obviously he did well before he was injured, I guess, but the game constantly changes, and with coming off such a catastrophic injury, he's not going to be nearly as explosive as he once was. He relied on his athleticism just as the next guy. So it's going to be even different. Someone like Kevin Durant, it's not going to be as different, but John Wall is going to be – the game is going to feel drastically different.
Yeah,
okay, go ahead, bro.
Yeah, I was, when John Wall was my guy, back in the day, meaning back 3-4 years ago when he was an all-star player. Yeah. But I agree for the most part. He's not going to be anywhere really close to the player that he was which was like a fringe all NBA player at best for like one season. 81, I guess he could be in that range. I would put him probably a little bit higher. Just because of like the guys that I'm seeing ahead of him, like KCP. Like KCP is just a defender. And
John Wall, we just got
him.
a tweet notification that says John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins will start tonight. That is confirmed.
Right.
So
I guess I'll watch the Rockets.
We'll see how they play. I really hope for the best. I really do.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
I was like a huge John Wall fan. I mean, I still kind of am, just because he was like literally my franchise point guard for like a decade. So I'm obviously rooting for him, but I'm extremely skeptical. But I would take him. I don't know. He's somewhere in the 70s. I would project for next season.
Yeah, as much as I've slandered John Wall the past 2 weeks, I mean, I'm still rooting for him. Like, if he goes out there and balls out, like, that's going to be awesome. That's going to make it even more special. But yeah, I think the worst, like, looking at the superstars, Dame above Steph and Harden, name one thing Dame does better than Curry.
Nothing.
Maybe raps.
You'd be surprised, but some people would say like he has more range. Like, what? Steph has the most range of all time.
It's crazy to me how people just forget. It's crazy.
People forgot like how good Steph Curry.
And some people, the worst part is some people actually say defense. Like that, like
Dame was an atrocious defender, while Steph is actually a pretty good
defender.
Yeah, he's not. Neither are great, but Curry is
at least Steph is a slight positive, while Dame's a negative.
Yeah, at worst, Steph Curry is like a neutral, and Dame is just terrible. So yeah, the whole list, it's just an L. ESPN is just an L. We knew this was coming. It's just an atrocious list.
Every time they make this list every offseason, it's an L. And it seems to get worse and worse.
It's just like, oh, here we go again.
I know.
So yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you guys are saying. I mean, you look at it from top to bottom. LeBron at 1, I don't have a problem with it. AD at 2, maybe a little high, but I don't hate it at all. Like, I don't hate that pick. No. Giannis at 3, I mean, I don't hate it either. Luka at 4, depending on how well he bounces, I don't hate it. Like,
I like that one.
It's a prediction list, because if one expects Luka to win MVP, then gets mad he's at 4. I don't know what they're thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to correlate at one point. Kawhi at 5, I think, is kind of you can't put him over Steph or KD when they're healthy. Pretty much that's how the list goes. There's multiple things that we already covered. They have Jamal Murray as a top 20 player over Karl Anthony Towns and Kyrie Irving. Like, similar with what you said about Curry and Dame. Name one thing Jamal Murray does better than Kyrie Irving.
Cricket.
Being more effective off the ball. I mean, that's pretty much I can name. Like, being a better off-ball player. That's probably it off the top of my head. But other than that, he doesn't do anything else nearly on the same level as Kyrie Irving does on the basketball court. And the biggest disagreement I've had is Damian Lillard over Steph Curry and James Harden, like we've all agreed on. Steph Curry is a top 2 player in the NBA. Not 3, not 4. No, he's top 2. He is top 2. If you watch the games, you know how important he is to his team, how impactful he is to that Golden State offense. And James Harden, similar as well. He is super impactful to the Houston Rockets offense and everything they do down there. And Damian Lillard, I love Damian Lillard. He's a super impactful offensive player. He's not on either of those two level offensively, and at least those two are slight positives or neutrals on defense, while Damian Lillard is a negative.
Yeah. And honestly, I think Lillard could be in like an MVP conversations this year. Like, I think the Blazers are going to be an extremely good team. But even if he does have an MVP kind of year, he's still not going to be better than Steph. Because Steph Curry could have, honestly, I think
it's like Giannis and LeBron. Like, LeBron's better, but Giannis can have an MVP.
Giannis is winning MVPs.
Yeah.
He's obviously LeBron's better. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. You really can't get mad at these lists though. Like it's so obvious they're just doing it for clicks. They're doing it for money. So like if you're really like getting that mad about these lists, like what do you?
Yeah. I mean, it's every year. It's every year people get triggered on social media. And I put a tweet out yesterday, and I said their list is trash. We know this. Move on. They do this every year. There's no reason to get mad about it. We can laugh at it. We can comment how bad it is. But there's no reason to get mad. They don't know what they're talking about.
At least they put my favorite player, Bradley Beal, at 22. So at least they didn't like completely shaft him.
I mean, lowercase W, like extremely lowercase W, if that's how you want to put it.
Hey, but they put Russell Westbrook at 36. How about
that? He's my franchise point guard. How could you do that?
Will, is that the best point guard in the league right there?
Absolutely, man.
Oh,
play, baby.
Rough, man. But yeah, we're gonna move on. Kyrie Irving had some interesting things to say over the last couple of days. So first off, he said that he would prefer not to attend media sessions post game due to the fact he had some reasoning, but we all know that internally it's the fact that it was mainly derived from his bad experiences with the media beforehand. And then today he came out with people criticizing him for that decision, saying he doesn't have the time to talk to pawns on a story. So I'm going to start with Thomas on this one. What are your thoughts on this whole Kyrie Irving situation? Is he in the right? Is he entitled to feel this way? How do you think he should approach this situation?
Look, if Kyrie wants to, if Kyrie really feels like he does not want to attend media sessions, whatever. I disagree. I think it's part of your contract. You should do it. But if that's what he truly feels like he needs to do, fine. But if people criticize you, if people get mad, if you get fined, deal with it. There's not much more for me to say except deal with it. You made a choice, fine. You're going to have to deal with the consequences. You're going to have to deal with people, not being happy with this decision. And if you're looking for the media's respect, I mean, I guess the move here is he's trying to avoid, the media twisting his words and all that stuff. But the media is not going to respect you anymore by doing this. Provided you pay the fines, you stay quiet, you go out and perform on the basketball court, I have no problems with this move. But if you're really going to go out there and complain, and if you're going to, paint yourself as a victim, which he seems to do a lot, that's where I have my problems. Again, the act itself is fine. It's whatever. If that's really something you feel like you don't want to do, whatever. Get fined, move on. But if you start to have problems with those consequences, to me, that's where I'm like, let's slow down.
So you make a really good point, and I have like a different perspective from this angle. So you said that Kyrie wants to gain more respect from the media, but he won't get it. Here's the thing: I don't think he necessarily cares because the media doesn't respect him anyway. Anyways, and we're the media. We have respect for Kyrie Irving, but there's others out there that don't. They don't share that same viewpoint on Kyrie Irving. So those past experiences with those people might have affected the way he feels about the media. And that's granted. I mean, we can't change how Kyrie's experience with other media members, and that's fine. If he feels that the best thing to do for himself is to avoid the media after things that they've done to twist his words, that's okay.
Absolutely.
But in a sense, like if it's a part of your contract, the only proper thing to do is get fined. Now, if he's going to create an alternative, probably do Zoom meetings or email questions, that's fine. You don't have to get fined if you're doing that. And I think he did say something like that. I'm not sure. I have to double check. But if he's going to email questions, Zoom meetings, those are fine. But if he's just going to completely skip, like it's fine. If he skips media sessions, that's fine. But I guess he has to get fined at least a little bit because it's a part of his contract.
Yeah, like I don't have a problem with the move itself. I'll have my problems if he starts to paint himself as a victim again, if he starts complaining about these fines and that kind of stuff, because it's part of your job. Okay, you play basketball, but there are other certain things you have to do. Attending media sessions is one of them. You don't want to do it? Fine. You'll just have to pay $25,000 each time you don't do it, and you can't get mad about that. You signed a contract. That's it. Like, no excuses, okay? If that's what you want to do, fine, but deal with the consequences.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm pretty much in agreement here. I think I'm okay with the concept of him not talking to the media just because we've seen like so much stuff from Kyrie get taken out of context and skewed by like I call them basically the ratings media. and we know who they are, just to distinguish them. Because I mean, we're part of the media too, but I would not put us in the same realm as them. So I just call them the ratings media. And we've seen Kyrie's comments be put on social media, and like there have been numerous times where I've looked at like a thing on Bleacher Report's Instagram, and it's like a quote from Kyrie, and then I look at the actual like full quote, and it's like completely different.
Yeah,
it's completely, the thing on Instagram was completely out of context, and it's like, oh yeah, of course. And then the comment section is like, oh, here Kyrie goes again. It's just like, it's just painting this bad narrative. So it makes sense that he would want, like, if there was a player that would want to step back from the media, it would probably be Kyrie Irving. I mean, remember the bubble social justice stuff? Like, Kyrie Irving was literally the first person to like say, hey guys, there could be some issues here with like their social justice and just the bubble in general.
And he got quote, and I quote someone I'm not going to directly say, but he got called a birdless brain by the mainstream media, which is just completely disrespectful. Yeah. And someone calls you that, you can understand why they wouldn't want to talk to a group of people.
Right. He was the first person to mention that stuff, and he was literally, and everyone was like, oh, Kyrie Irving, the bad guy again. And I mean, it wasn't just like fans, like mad Celtics fans. It was like actual people who have platforms in the media, bashing Kyrie Irving. And then when, the Bucks did all their social justice stuff and the NBA was rallying around, everyone was like, oh, this is great. It's just like, what? I know it's one person versus like the entire league, but still, we're not going to just.
The same concept.
Right, exactly. We're not going to act like, Kyrie Irving wasn't trying to be, the first person to warn us about this kind of stuff. So to me, I'm okay with that in principle. But, when it comes to the pawn stuff, I mean, I guess it's a little bit of harsh wordage, but I don't really care that much about it. To me, he seems pretty, I would say, disgruntled just with the reputation. And to be honest, it makes sense. I will say this, though, with Kyrie, I wish Kyrie would just, like, Kyrie, sometimes he's just not very conscious of the word of what he, like, Kyrie, he seems, when comparing him to a player like LeBron always knows, he always has a very calculated when it comes to what he says in front of the media, just because he knows how it's like going to come out and what could be used against him. I mean, he, early in his career, he actually was a little bit more free with what he was saying in like interviews and stuff. But over the course of his career, he's kind of gone back and taken, I guess he's called like the high road when it comes to that kind of stuff. Kyrie, he just kind of speaks his mind, and that's kind of just who he is. But that's like, can just be easy bait.
And that's also formed fake narratives around Kyrie. That, like the way he comes off, like people call him a bad teammate, and every other teammate that has played with him, they've said he's not a bad teammate. It doesn't affect his on-court play. And another thing, like the fake rumor that came out that he wanted to start his own league, I think that was forged by the media. I mean, I can understand why one would get mad at that, but I think a lot of it has to do with the way you come off as well, which is understandable. I think the main reason why Kyrie wants to distance himself is he doesn't want to add any more fuel to the fire, and I completely get that. But if it's contractually, like if you're contractually obligated to talk to the media, which I get you don't want to do, at least you have to pay your penance, I guess. Like.
Yeah. I mean, my only thing with I wish Kyrie would just Pranav, your camera went out, by the way. But the only thing with Kyrie is I wish he would just not take back what he says, but just watch what he says a little bit. Because let's be honest, like if he was more measured with what he says around the media, okay, you're good. If he was a little bit more measured with what he actually said, then some of this stuff wouldn't happen. So it kind of goes both ways. But he probably won't, just because that's who he is. But we'll see.
Yeah, and I don't think what Kyrie realizes is that by not attending these media sessions, he's only really adding fuel to the fire. Like, yeah, his words aren't going to get twisted, but now it's a topic more than ever. We're here talking about this because it's that big of a deal, because it's Kyrie Irving.
It's just a reputation.
Exactly. Yeah. If this was any other player, we're probably not sitting here talking about this. But because it's Kyrie Irving, I think it low-key has added some fuel to the fire, and I think that he may not realize that.
And do you think that's directly his fault? Because we've seen players like Russell Westbrook have pretty animated interactions with the media, but we don't necessarily talk about it. Like he leads the league in technical fouls every year. Will's guy, Russell Westbrook, he leads the league in technical fouls pretty much year in and year out. He's also cussed at reporters. He said the next question for every question. So, I mean, we never really talk about that, but you think it's a different thing?
It's just, I think it's a reputation thing. You know, Kyrie has that kind of reputation of being like a bad guy when it comes to stuff like this. And Russell Westbrook kind of has a reputation of, you know, he has faults as a basketball player, but no one really questions his passion or his effort. And so when we see him have these, we kind of twist what we think of what Russell Westbrook says just because we see.
Do you think that's mainly due to confirmation bias spread by like other media members that Kyrie doesn't have the same amount of passion? Because if you watch him play, he has passion.
Right, obviously. Yeah, I think the thing is like you just watch like Russell Westbrook, he's just a lot more animated. But yeah, when it comes to like their internal passions for the game, I'm sure they're all at like an all-time high. I mean, they're superstar basketball players. Like they're at the top of the game. So I mean, obviously they have an incredible amount of passion, but you kind of see it with Russell Westbrook just in the way he plays because he's so athletic and so animated and talks so much. And Kyrie just kind of goes out there and he's amazing handles and is finishing, and he's not like athletic. I mean, he's frankly he's more skilled than Russell Westbrook just when it comes to scoring the basketball player.
Not even close.
Westbrook, where it's like athleticism.
But if that's all we have to say on the Kyrie Irving situation, we are going to get into our last and final topic of the show. My guy, Paul George, Payoff P now. Payoff P just received a max deal, 5 years, $226 million extension with the Los Angeles Clippers, which will take him all the way to his age 35 season where he'll be making around $40 million. Guys, do you think this was a good signing by the Clippers? Do you think it was a bit premature? Do you think it was too much money? Do you think Paul George should have been rewarded based on his playoff experience this past season? What do you take away from this deal? I'm going to start with Will.
Is that a rhetorical question about getting rewarded for his amazing playoff performances? I mean, no. I mean, for Paul George, the player, this is great. Obviously, like he did, like a few days ago, he said, he wants to stay a Clipper, and so I mean, this, I guess,
it's the first time he can keep his spot.
Yeah, he actually kept his word for now. I mean, he did sign with OKC, and then
he got traded
the next season. So I'm not really gonna put like that much stock into this. So it's great for Paul George. He got his money, too much money. I mean, he's making more than Anthony Davis, and he's not even close to the player that Anthony Davis is.
Not even close.
His contract is the same years, I believe, as Anthony Davis. He's making what?
5 years, 226 compared to 5 years, $190 million. He's making $36 million more than a player who's on a way other level.
Right. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
And he's only getting better. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Paul George is like, he's older than Anthony Davis.
Significantly.
That's ridiculous. And if Kawhi leaves, this is terrible for the Clippers. I mean, I guess it's better to have Paul George than to not, just because at least you have a good player on your team versus, I mean, if Clippers didn't have Paul George or Kawhi, they'd be absolutely screwed because they have no picks. So at least if Kawhi left, you'd have Paul George to fall back on and not be an awful team. But all I have to say for the Clippers is good luck. I mean, because like Paul George and the Clippers must think that Kawhi is really committed to the Clippers for them to do this, or else this doesn't really make much sense to me. So yeah, good luck, Clippers. You better re-sign Kawhi, or else you're screwed with or without Paul George.
I don't really know what to say. I mean, Paul George, like you're gonna pay that dude. Yeah, after watching where the Clippers so I know he just shot like 40% from the field and all, but like $226 million for the next 5 years until he's like 35. That sounds pretty reasonable. Like, is that seriously what went through their head when they signed him to that extension? Like, I just don't see a reasonable thought process where they're like, oh yeah, this is such a smart deal.
Thomas, by the way, hate to interrupt you, but Killian Hayes is starting ahead of Derrick Rose tonight for the Detroit Pistons.
Love to see that. But yeah, like Paul George, I kind of question how much he wants to win a little bit as well. Like, I saw a quote, I believe it was today or yesterday, where he was like, oh yeah, I'm finally back with my trainer where I had an MVP season. It's like, dude, if you had an MVP season with the trainer, why'd you leave?
And which MVP season? I don't remember that trophy.
Yeah, where it was.
I remember him falling off in the second half. But.
Yeah, I remember MVPG where he was good for a month and then existed for the next 3 months.
Best player in the NBA for like a month, and then he was like not.
Yeah.
He was still. Yeah, that was his best season.
Don't get me wrong. I was hyped during that month. He was
right
to watch, but like, man, like.
And then in the playoffs, he didn't do anything.
Yeah,
he was terrible again.
Like
he was better than Westbrook. But I'm not sure how much stock that holds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the Thunder, they basically had two of the worst
playoff performance
for star players that we've seen on the same team.
And now one of them's on your team. Good luck, Will.
Well, at least we don't have expectations to win a championship. So
we never had those expectations.
Really?
We had expectations to be good, though.
Yeah, you had expectations to be better than the Wizards.
I think at this point, people have stopped taking Ross really seriously. So, yeah, it's a better situation.
Yeah. But to go off on what you said, Thomas, I think, if anything, you would want to pay Kawhi more money than he deserves, than Paul George.
Absolutely.
So it's like, why? I mean, they just overpaid for Paul George, and now you're going to have to – I mean, if Kawhi does, resign, you're going to have to extend him long-term as well. And then, I mean, that is a lot of money. So how much is – Paul George is making what, like $40 million a year or 38 or something like that?
Yeah.
Kawhi is probably going to be like around the same, if not a little bit more. That's like $80 million tied to two players.
Rivera commented in the comments, pre-injury PG might have won a championship. No, he wouldn't have. We saw it happen. He lost in 7 games to LeBron James and the Miami Heat, and he would not have beaten those Cleveland Cavaliers teams. So he was great pre-injury. I loved watching him pre-injury. I mean,
yeah,
he's
the best version of Paul George, to be honest.
That was like the exciting version.
Yeah, exactly. Because before his injury, at least he had potential to get better. I mean, he was supposed to be like the neck. He was supposed to take over. We saw him battle LeBron.
Right now, PG was on a level higher than that.
Yeah,
he was really good pre-injury, but
with this being said, I don't think Kawhi stays. I think he's gone.
Yeah, he does.
I think he's just going to realize that. Oh shoot, we're paying Paul George $100 million a year to average 15 points per game in the playoffs. Yeah, I'm just going to go sign basically anywhere else. They have no picks. Their supporting cast is only getting older. So if I'm Kawhi in 2021 or 2022 or whenever he becomes a free agent, I'm out.
At the end of the next season.
I am running as far away as I can from the Clippers, and I'm going to join I don't know, just anywhere, because the Clippers, let's just be honest. I mean, maybe this year they have a comeback season. I don't see it happening. But if you're Kawhi in 2021, do you look at this roster and you're like, wow, I am so excited by this. I can't wait to compete for championships. No, you're not. You're trying to get as far away from that team as possible.
Yeah, they easily have the most. I mean, to me, the only reason Kawhi would sign is if he really loves Los Angeles that much.
Yeah.
He left a better situation for a worse situation, frankly. I mean, we thought it was a better situation, but in hindsight, it was not at all. He should have just stayed with the Raptors, to be quite frank.
Yeah, so I'm gonna quickly disagree with both of you. I think that it is a good signing that they signed PG. They re-signed PG to this deal, and the reason why is they had no other choice. They had no other choice because they mortgaged their entire future to acquire Paul George from the Oklahoma City Thunder. They traded Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 5 first-round picks, Danilo Gallinari, 2 pick swaps to go get Paul George. So, I mean, yes, we know that he struggles in the playoffs year in and year out, but what other choice do they have? Let him walk for free? That means you basically got nothing for all of that.
Trade him.
Trade him. Yeah, they have the option to do that now. They do.
They had it before. They had that option before. They should have just, instead of extending him, they should have just dealt him in the offseason.
The reason why he has even more trade value right now is because he's locked in. He's locked into a long-term deal. If you trade him right now to, let's say, a team like the Hornets, I'm just using a hypothetical example, but if you trade him right now, he's walking out the door because he has a player option at the end of this year. He has an extremely high, I wouldn't say extremely high, but he has higher trade value than he would have had before the extension right now, because if you're going to trade for Paul George, you know that he's contractually obligated to stay with you for at least 5 years.
Is that necessarily a good thing? I mean, who knows?
For some teams, he's still I think the PG disrespect, although it's funny, is kind of getting out of hand because keep in mind this guy is still a top 20 player in the NBA. He still is.
Sure.
when he's healthy, and when he's playing like he should be playing, this dude is one of the better perimeter defenders in the NBA, and he's also a lethal offensive scorer. So, I mean, this guy, like, you have to keep into account he's still a really good player. He still has value on the market, and with this extension, I believe that you have the option to trade him for even more than you would have had, and you don't lose him for nothing. So I believe that although I wouldn't have paid him anywhere near the amount. Don't get me wrong. I would not have given him anywhere near the money he got. Even though the NBA has a cap hit, I would not have given him anywhere near the money he got. I don't think they had any other option because if they want to trade him, I think the best course was to sign and then trade him.
Yeah, and if it helps you like convince Kawhi to stay, then this was good. This was great because I mean, without Kawhi, if Kawhi leaves, you're done. Like
I don't see Kawhi leaving. And here's the reason why: he put himself through hell and he put himself through so much trouble to get to Los Angeles, and he clearly had a motive of not like he wants to win, obviously, but I think his biggest priority is staying home. I don't see him leaving the city of Los Angeles. Like, if there's one team he goes to, it's Los Angeles, and you know what I mean, and that's not happening.
Right. I think honestly,
it's actually impossible.
If the Raptors hadn't have won the championship, I don't know if he would have gone to Los Angeles because I think Kawhi honestly he won his championship and now he's kind of. I mean, he still wants to win, but he doesn't want to win as much.
He would have still gone to the Clippers had they not won, and the reason why is before the season you even picked them, Will. The Clippers were like perfect dream situation. I mean, why wouldn't he have gone there? It's not like he was going to a bad situation. He was going to.
I think the chances just would have been less. Yeah, I guess he probably would still.
I think his motive was to go to LA all along. Like, I think that's
right. But to be honest, like the Clippers easily, to me, the Clippers and the Bucks have the most pressure on them to win championships. I mean, the Lakers are favorites, sure, but like the Clippers, I mean, you're supposed to be favorites last year.
I would say more so the Clippers since they have a better roster.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, going back to the Paul George thing, it really does depend on the team. But like with this extension, I think some teams are in the fear of, okay, Paul George, yes, very good player. But at the same time, we're going to be paying this dude $50 million when he's 35 years old. And keep in mind, Paul George, let's not act like he doesn't have an injury history as well. I think that's something that has to play a factor into this. I mean, the dude missed, the first 20 games of the season last year, I believe, or something like that. Like, the dude has an injury history. And so 5 years down the line, I mean, maybe now it's like, oh, sweet, we got Paul George for 5 more years. But then it's like 3 years later and you're like, oh, wow, we have the most unmovable contract in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think if you're going to trade Paul George, you have a two-year window to do it. I don't see it happening. I think Paul George is committed to staying with the Clippers. And if Paul George is – let's say Paul George, if he had the production he had with the Thunder in the 2019 playoffs, although it wasn't like spectacular, it was decent. It was decent. I mean, we can't deny the fact that it was decent. If he had that decent production, Clippers would have made it to the conference. Right?
It was better than It was better than when he.
It was way better than 2020. If he just had that, if he played like that for one game out of the entire 3 straight games they lost, Clippers are in the conference finals, and they might. We don't know what could have happened from there. So. I mean, it all comes down to how he plays in the playoffs. I think they didn't really have any other choice. That's how I feel on this one. But if you guys don't have anything more to add to this, thank you guys for tuning in. This was honestly another extremely fun episode. We have a lot of stuff coming up. NBA season is literally just almost 2 weeks.
Like right now.
Yeah, like preseason starting right now.
Like tipping off now.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Enjoy your preseason basketball. So yeah, thanks. See you.
Yeah, see you later.
Is this the dagger?